The massive shadow fell across Earth's moon first, then stretched toward the blue marble that hung in space like a precious gem. Admiral Zexthon of the Galactic Empire's Third Fleet watched through the bridge windows of his flagship, the Dominion's Will, as Earth grew larger on the view screen. His 4 arms crossed behind his back in the traditional pose of imperial authority, while his silver eyes studied the primitive world below. "Such a small planet," he muttered to his aide, Commander Veltar. "Hard to believe these humans have caused us so much trouble." The Empire had been expanding for over 3,000 years, absorbing world after world into its vast network of controlled systems. Most species submitted willingly once they saw the overwhelming power of the Imperial fleet. Those who resisted were quickly crushed and their worlds occupied by force. It was a system that had worked perfectly across the galaxy, until they reached the edge of this small spiral arm and encountered Earth. The first contact had gone according to standard protocol. Ambassador Krelhos had arrived in a single diplomatic vessel 6 months ago, broadcasting the usual message of peace and prosperity that came with joining the Empire. The humans had been polite, even friendly. They had listened to the terms: surrender all military assets, submit to imperial law, provide regular tribute of resources and population for imperial service, and accept the placement of an imperial governor to oversee their world. The response had been unexpected. "Thank you for your generous offer," the human representative had said with a strange expression that the translator couldn't quite capture. "But we'll have to decline." No threats, no demands for better terms, no fear of the consequences. Just a simple refusal, as if they were declining an invitation to dinner rather than rejecting the might of an empire that controlled half the galaxy. Admiral Zexthon had been called in to handle what the Empire classified as a minor compliance issue. His fleet of 200 warships should have been more than enough to convince the humans to reconsider their position. But as his ships took position around Earth, something unusual happened. The humans weren't running. They weren't begging for mercy. They weren't even trying to hide. Instead, they were broadcasting on all frequencies, sending the same message over and over. "You are not welcome here. Leave immediately." "Admiral," Commander Veltar reported, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They appear to be powering up some kind of defensive systems." Zexthon's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Defensive systems? These primitives barely have interplanetary travel. What could they possibly have that would threaten Imperial warships?" The answer came in the form of a brilliant blue beam that lanced up from Earth's surface. It struck the heavy cruiser Eternal Victory dead center, and the massive ship simply disappeared. Not destroyed in an explosion of fire and debris, but gone as if it had never existed at all. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. Every eye was fixed on the empty space where a ship carrying 3,000 crew members had been just moments before. "What?" Veltar's voice came out as a whisper. "What was that?" Before Zexthon could answer, more beams erupted from Earth's surface. Blue, green, and violet streams of energy that moved too fast to track, striking ship after ship with surgical precision. Each beam meant another Imperial vessel vanishing from existence, leaving no trace behind. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zexthon shouted, but it was too late. The beams seemed to anticipate where each ship would go, striking them regardless of their attempts to dodge. In less than 5 minutes, half of his fleet was gone. The communication system crackled to life with a transmission from Earth. A human face appeared on the screen. Middle-aged with gray hair and calm blue eyes, he wore no uniform or symbols of rank, just simple civilian clothes. "This is Director Sarah Chen of Earth Defense," the woman said in a steady voice. "You have exactly 10 minutes to leave our system. Any ships remaining after that time will be removed permanently." Zexthon found his voice. "You dare threaten the Galactic Empire? Do you have any idea what you've done?" This is an act of war against a civilization that spans thousands of worlds. The human's expression didn't change. We know exactly who you are, Admiral Zexthon. We know about the Empire's expansion policies and what you do to worlds that refuse to submit. We also know about the 300 species you've enslaved and the billions of beings who live under your boot. She paused, and something cold flickered in her eyes. What you don't know is that we've been watching you for a very long time. Impossible, Zexthon snarled. Your species only achieved spaceflight a few decades ago. You're barely more advanced than animals. That's what we wanted you to think. Chen's smile was thin and sharp. You see, Admiral, we learned about the Empire long before you learned about us. We've had agents throughout your territory for over 50 years, studying your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We've been preparing for this day. The implications hit Zexthon like a physical blow. If the humans had been infiltrating the Empire for decades without detection, if they possessed technology that could make Imperial warships simply vanish. You're lying, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. No primitive species could accomplish such a thing. Check your records, Chen suggested. Look up the unexplained disappearances of the survey vessel, Cosmic Herald, 47 years ago, or the research station that went dark in the Vega system 32 years ago, or the mining colony that reported strange equipment failures before losing contact with Imperial Command 21 years ago. Her smile widened slightly. We've been very busy. Veltar was frantically working at his console, pulling up the files Chen had mentioned. His face grew paler with each report. Admiral, he whispered, it's all here. Every incident she mentioned, plus dozens more. Equipment failures, missing ships, unexplained phenomena. It all follows a pattern. The humans have been reverse engineering our technology for decades, Zexthon realized with growing horror. They've had time to study our weaknesses, develop countermeasures. More than that, Chen said, as if she could hear his thoughts. We've had time to surpass you. The Empire has grown comfortable in its dominance. You stopped innovating centuries ago, content to use the same weapons and tactics against every new species you encountered. But we humans, we never stop improving, never stop adapting. It's what we do. Another barrage of energy beams erupted from Earth, targeting the remaining ships that were trying to flee to the edge of the system. One by one, they vanished in the same disturbing silence as the others. 5 minutes remaining, Chen announced calmly. Zexthon's mind raced through his options. He could try to call for reinforcements, but it would take weeks for them to arrive, and he was beginning to suspect that Earth's defenses were far more extensive than what he'd seen. He could attempt to bombard the planet from maximum range, but something told him the humans had prepared for that possibility as well. The truth was becoming clear. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had encountered a species that was not only unwilling to submit, but actually capable of fighting back. More than capable, the humans had turned the tables completely, making the Empire's vaunted fleet look like children's toys. How? He asked finally. How did you do this without us noticing? Chen's expression softened slightly, as if she understood his confusion. Because you never saw us as a threat. Admiral, to you, we were just another primitive species to be conquered. You never imagined that we might be playing a longer game, gathering information while appearing helpless. Your own arrogance blinded you to what we were really doing. This won't end here, Zexthon said, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. The Empire will send more ships, bigger fleets. We have the resources of 1,000 worlds at our disposal. Yes, we know, Chen replied, and we're counting on it. You see, Admiral, this was never just about defending Earth. This is about something much bigger, something that's going to change the balance of power in this galaxy forever. Before Zexthon could ask what she meant, warning alarms began blaring throughout his ship. His tactical officer's voice cut through the noise. Admiral, We're detecting massive energy buildups all across the planet's surface. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's big. Chen's image leaned forward slightly. 1 minute remaining, Admiral. I suggest you use it wisely, because what happens next will determine whether the Galactic Empire continues to exist or whether it becomes just another cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating humanity. The countdown continued as Zexthon stared at the human on his screen, seeing her not as a primitive alien, but as something far more dangerous, an equal, perhaps even a superior. The Empire had built its power on the assumption that no species could match their technological might or strategic thinking. But the humans had done more than match them. They had played a game the Empire didn't even know they were part of, and they had already won. 30 seconds, Admiral. Zexthon closed his eyes and gave the order that would haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships retreat to the edge of the system, maximum speed. As the surviving vessels of his once mighty fleet fled Earth's defenses, Chen's voice followed them into the void. Remember this day, Admiral. Remember that humanity gave you a choice, and you chose wisely. Not all of your people will be so fortunate. Admiral Zexthon's flagship limped back to Imperial Command 3 weeks after the disaster at Earth. The journey that should have taken 10 days stretched longer as his remaining ships dealt with systems failures that seemed to multiply with each passing hour. By the time they reached the massive space station orbiting Nexus Prime, the Empire's capital world, half of his surviving vessels were running on backup power and emergency life support. The summons came within an hour of his arrival. High Command wanted answers, and they wanted them immediately. The council chamber was a vast circular room designed to intimidate. Representatives from 100 subject species sat in tiered galleries, while the 12 members of the Imperial Council occupied the central dais. At their head sat Supreme Chancellor Mordak, whose ancient features bore the weight of centuries spent building and maintaining the Empire's power. Admiral Zexthon, Mordak's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustics, reaching every corner. You departed with 200 ships of the Third Fleet. You return with 47 damaged vessels and a tale that strains credibility. Explain. Zexthon stood at attention in the center of the chamber, feeling the eyes of hundreds of beings upon him. Honorable Chancellor, the humans possess defensive capabilities far beyond our initial assessments. They destroyed over half our fleet using weapons we have never encountered before. Impossible, snapped General Vex Ori from her position on the council. Our intelligence reports clearly stated that Earth's technology was primitive by Imperial standards. They barely had faster-than-light travel. That's what they wanted us to believe, Zexthon replied. The humans have been infiltrating our territory for decades, studying our technology and developing countermeasures. They knew we were coming long before we knew they existed. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Chancellor Mordak raised one clawed hand for silence. You claim that this primitive species has been operating covertly within Imperial space for 50 years without detection? I have evidence, Chancellor. Zexthon activated his personal datapad, projecting a holographic display of incident reports. Missing ships, failed expeditions, unexplained equipment malfunctions, all occurring along the routes that eventually led to Earth. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for. Intelligence Director Korthok leaned forward, his cybernetic implants gleaming in the chamber's light. Even if this is true, Admiral, it doesn't explain how a single world could threaten the might of the Empire. What exactly did you encounter? The memory of watching Imperial ships simply vanish still haunted Zexthon's dreams. Energy weapons unlike anything in our arsenal, Chancellor. They didn't destroy our vessels. They erased them. No debris, no energy signature, just gone. Preposterous, General Vex Ori scoffed. No weapon can simply make matter disappear. The laws of physics don't allow it. The humans have apparently found a way around those laws, Zexthon replied grimly. Or they understand physics better than we do. Chancellor Mordak's expression had grown increasingly troubled as the briefing continued. Assuming your report is accurate, Admiral, what do you recommend as our next course of action? Before Zexathon could answer, the Chamber's communication system activated. A priority alert from the border regions filled the air with urgent tones. "Urgent message for the Imperial Council," announced the duty officer. "We're receiving reports of coordinated attacks throughout the outer sectors. Imperial installations are under assault by unknown forces using advanced technology." The chamber erupted in shocked voices as more reports flooded in. Mining stations destroyed, patrol fleets vanishing, entire worlds going dark. The pattern emerged quickly. Every attack was targeting Imperial infrastructure with surgical precision, leaving civilian populations untouched, but crippling the Empire's ability to maintain control. "How many systems?" Mordak demanded. 47 confirmed attacks in the last 6 hours, Chancellor. The number is still rising." Zexthon felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. "It's the humans, Chancellor. This is what Director Chen meant when she said this was about more than defending Earth." "Impossible," General Vexori protested. "Even if they somehow managed to build a fleet, they couldn't coordinate attacks across such a vast area. The logistics alone—" "Unless they've been planning this for decades," Intelligence Director Korthak interrupted, his voice hollow with realization. "If they've had agents throughout our territory, if they've been preparing staging areas and supply caches—" The implications hit the Council like a physical force. The Empire had been infiltrated so thoroughly that the humans could strike anywhere, anytime. Worse, they had demonstrated the capability to make entire fleets disappear without a trace. "Sir," the duty officer's voice cut through the stunned silence. "We're receiving a priority transmission. Source unknown, but it's being broadcast simultaneously to every Imperial facility in the galaxy." "Put it through," Mordak ordered. The chamber's main display activated, showing the same human woman who had spoken with Zexthon at Earth. Director Sarah Chen appeared as calm and composed as before, but now she stood in what looked like a military command center filled with advanced technology. "Greetings, Imperial Council," Chen began without preamble. "I am Director Chen of Earth Defense, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Terran Federation and our allies in the Free Worlds Coalition." "Free Worlds Coalition?" Mordak whispered. Several council members leaned forward, their faces pale with recognition. "For the past 50 years," Chen continued, "we have been working with resistance movements throughout your empire. Species that you believed were completely subjugated have been building their own networks, preparing for the day when they could strike back against their oppressors." The display shifted to show a star map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared across Imperial space, each one representing a world in rebellion. There were hundreds of them, scattered throughout every sector of the Empire. "You built your power on fear and overwhelming force," Chen explained. "But you made one crucial mistake. You assumed that conquest meant the end of resistance. You forgot that intelligent beings will always fight for their freedom, given the opportunity." General Vex Ori found her voice. "What do you want? Terms for surrender?" Chen's laugh was cold. "Surrender? General, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not seeking terms. We're delivering an ultimatum." The star map changed again, now showing the current attacks in real time. Imperial positions were winking out one by one, like stars being extinguished. "The Galactic Empire is finished," Chen stated matter-of-factly. "Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but soon. We've spent half a century learning everything about your society, your technology, your weaknesses. We know which species are loyal and which are waiting for a chance to rebel. We know which systems are critical to your infrastructure and which ones are just for show." Chancellor Mordak rose from his seat, his ancient frame trembling with rage. "You dare threaten the power that has brought order to this galaxy? The Empire has maintained peace for 3 millennia. Peace? Chen's voice turned sharp. Is that what you call the enslavement of 300 species? The forced tribute that keeps billions living in poverty while imperial worlds grow fat and lazy? The summary executions of anyone who dares question your authority? She shook her head. That's not peace, Chancellor. That's oppression with good marketing. Our rule has prevented countless wars, Mordak protested. Without the Empire's authority, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But that's not your choice to make. Each species has the right to determine its own destiny, even if that destiny includes making mistakes. What you call order, we call tyranny. The attacks on the star map were accelerating now. Entire sectors were going dark as coordinated strikes crippled Imperial defenses. The Empire's vaunted fleet was being systematically eliminated, not through massive battles, but through precise, targeted operations that left no room for response. Here's what's going to happen, Chen announced. Imperial forces have 24 hours to withdraw from all non-core worlds. Any ships or installations that remain will be destroyed. After that, we'll begin the process of dismantling your empire piece by piece until only your original homeworlds remain. And if we refuse? General Vexori demanded. Chen's expression hardened. Then we'll do it anyway, but with a lot more bloodshed. The choice is yours, but either way, the age of imperial domination is over. Intelligence Director Korthak leaned forward. You're asking us to abandon control of thousands of worlds. Even if we wanted to comply, the logistics would be impossible. We have millions of personnel scattered across the galaxy. We're not unreasonable, Chen replied. Non-combatant personnel will be given safe passage to Imperial core worlds. We're even prepared to provide transportation for those who choose to leave peacefully. But your military forces and colonial governments need to be gone within the time frame, or they'll be removed by force. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The magnitude of what the humans were proposing hit everyone at once. The Empire wasn't just facing a rebellion, it was facing its own dissolution. Options, Mordak said quietly. General Vexori spoke first. We fight. Rally every available ship. Call in all reserve fleets. Even if the humans have advanced technology, we still outnumber them. With what? Korthak asked bitterly. Half our fleet just disappeared without firing a shot. And if they have allies throughout our territory, our numerical advantage means nothing. Admiral Zexthon cleared his throat. If I may, Chancellor, I've seen what their weapons can do. Fighting them isn't just futile, it's suicide. And if they're telling the truth about having supporters throughout the Empire, they are, Korthak confirmed, studying incoming intelligence reports. I'm seeing confirmation of uprisings on dozens of worlds. Species we thought were completely pacified are suddenly displaying advanced technology and coordinated tactics. The humans weren't just infiltrating our territory. They were arming and training resistance movements. The council sat in silence as the reality of their situation became clear. The empire they had spent millennia building was crumbling around them, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 6 months after the ultimatum, former Admiral Zexthon stood on the observation deck of the transport ship Last Hope, watching as the final Imperial evacuation convoy departed from what had once been the prosperous mining world of Kepler 442b. Below them, the planet's native Velkari people were emerging from hidden bunkers and underground cities, finally free to reclaim their ancestral lands after 3 centuries of Imperial occupation. The sight should have filled him with bitterness, but instead, Zexthon felt only a weary resignation. The Great Withdrawal, as historians were already calling it, had proceeded with shocking efficiency. True to their word, the humans had provided safe passage for any Imperial citizens who chose to leave the former occupied territories. What surprised him was how many had chosen to stay. Sir, his former aide, Commander Veltar, approached. though neither of them held rank anymore. The Imperial Navy had been dissolved 2 months ago when the last fleet surrendered to human forces. Captain Reeves would like to speak with you. Zexthon nodded and made his way to the bridge. Captain Elizabeth Reeves was one of the human officers overseeing the evacuation process, and she had been surprisingly courteous to the former Imperial personnel. Unlike the vengeful conquerors Zexthon had expected, the humans seemed genuinely concerned with making the transition as peaceful as possible. Sorry, Mr. Zexthan, Reeves corrected herself. I wanted to update you on the resettlement options available when we reach the core worlds. The Terran Federation has negotiated agreements with several neutral systems that are willing to accept Imperial refugees. Refugees. Zexthon repeated the word with dark humor. A year ago, I commanded a fleet of 200 ships. Now I'm a refugee. I know this must be difficult, Reeves said genuinely. But for what it's worth, you handled the withdrawal from the Outer Rim with honor. A lot of your former colleagues chose to fight rather than accept the new reality. That led to unnecessary casualties. Zexthon had heard the reports. Admiral Krekhos had attempted to make a last stand in the Arcturus system with 3 full battle groups. The human response had been swift and absolute. Every Imperial ship in the system had simply vanished in the space of 10 minutes, leaving behind only empty space and unanswered distress calls. Captain Reeves, Zexthon asked carefully, may I ask you something that's been bothering me? Of course. Your people could have destroyed the Empire completely. You had the technology, the positioning, the element of surprise. Instead, you're going to considerable expense to help us relocate peacefully. Why? Reeves was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. Because we're not you, she said finally. We could have chosen the path of vengeance, but that would make us no better than the Empire we just dismantled. The goal was never to replace one tyranny with another. But surely you understand that many of my people will never forgive this humiliation. Some will spend their lives planning revenge. Some will, yes, Reeves acknowledged. And we'll deal with that if it becomes necessary. But most of your people aren't evil, Mr. Zexthon. They were born into a system that told them Imperial rule was natural and right. Given time and distance from that system, many of them will come to see things differently. The bridge's communication system chimed with an incoming message. Captain Reeves, this is Director Chen. We've received word that the final Imperial holdouts have surrendered. Nexus Prime has agreed to the terms. Understood, Director, Reeves replied. What's the status of Chancellor Mordak? He's chosen exile on one of the neutral worlds rather than stand trial for war crimes. Given his age and the fact that he's agreed to full cooperation with the transition process, we've decided to honor that choice. Zexthon felt a complex mix of emotions hearing that news. Mordak had been a hard ruler, but he had also been the only stable leadership the Empire had known for centuries. Seeing him reduced to a war criminal seeking exile was like watching the end of an era. Sir, Veltar approached again. The Velkari delegation is requesting permission to come aboard. They want to thank you personally. Thank me? Zexthon was confused. For what? For ordering the orbital bombardment platforms deactivated before you withdrew from their system. They say it saved millions of lives. The irony wasn't lost on Zexthon. He had given that order partly out of spite, denying the Empire the option of destroying what it couldn't keep. But the end result had been mercy, even if that hadn't been his intention. The Velkari who came aboard were unlike any beings Zexthon had encountered during his service. Their natural blue-green skin had been hidden beneath prosthetic flesh-tone coverings for so long that seeing them in their true forms was startling. But what struck him most was their demeanor. Despite centuries of oppression, they showed no hatred toward their former occupiers. Admiral Zexthon, their leader, an elderly female named Sylvana, approached with what appeared to be a ceremonial object. On behalf of the Velkari people, we present you with this token of our gratitude. It was a small crystal sculpture, beautifully crafted and glowing with an inner light. I don't understand, Zexthon said. I was part of the system that enslaved your people. Yes, Sylvana agreed. But in the end, you chose differently. You could have activated the bombardment platforms when your retreat was announced. You could have made our liberation cost millions of lives. Instead, you chose mercy. I wouldn't call it mercy, Zexthon replied honestly. I was angry, bitter about losing. I just didn't want to give the Empire the satisfaction of destroying what it couldn't keep. Sylvana's large eyes studied him for a moment. The humans told us something interesting about your species, Admiral. They said that beings capable of growth never stop learning, never stop changing. Perhaps your reasons don't matter as much as your choice. After the Velkari departed, Zexthon found himself in his quarters, staring at the crystal sculpture. It was beautiful in a way that Imperial art never was, organic and flowing rather than rigid and imposing. For the first time in months, he began to think about what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. A soft chime indicated an incoming personal message. To his surprise, it was from Director Chen herself. Mr. Zexthon, her image appeared on his personal screen. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Captain Reeves spoke highly of your conduct during the withdrawal process, and I wanted to make you an offer. An offer? Zexthon was wary. What kind of offer? The Terran Federation is establishing a new organization called the Galactic Reconciliation Commission. Its mission will be to help former Imperial worlds transition to self-governance and to mediate disputes between species that have historical grievances. We're looking for people who understand both sides of the equation. You want me to work for you? Zexthon couldn't keep the incredulity out of his voice. I'm the enemy. I commanded the fleet that tried to conquer your world. You're someone who knows how the Empire worked and why it failed, Chen corrected. More importantly, you're someone who's capable of changing. The Velkari aren't the only people who've noticed your conduct during the withdrawal. We could use someone with your experience and your newfound perspective. Zexthon was quiet for a long moment. What would the job entail? Helping former Imperial species find their place in a galaxy without the Empire. Some of them have never known self-governance. Others have ancient feuds that were only kept in check by Imperial authority. It won't be easy work, and there will be people who hate you for your past associations. And some who hate me for my current ones, Zexthon added. Chen nodded. The galaxy is going to go through a difficult transition period. Wars are inevitable as old grievances resurface and power vacuums are filled. But if we can help enough worlds find peaceful solutions, maybe we can prevent the chaos that many fear will follow the Empire's collapse. The offer was tempting, but Zexthon had to ask the obvious question. Why would you trust someone like me with such responsibility? Because someone like you understands the cost of getting it wrong, Chen replied. The Empire collapsed because it stopped growing, stopped adapting to new realities. We don't want to make the same mistake. We need people who can help us see our blind spots, who can tell us when we're being too idealistic or too heavy-handed. Zexthon looked again at the Velkari crystal sculpture, its inner light casting patterns on the walls of his quarters. For 3 decades, he had served an empire built on the principle that might made right. Now he was being offered a chance to help build something different, something based on the radical idea that different species could coexist without one dominating the others. It wouldn't be easy. There would be failures, setbacks, conflicts that couldn't be resolved peacefully. Some species would choose war over cooperation, and some wounds would prove too deep to heal. But perhaps that was exactly why the attempt had to be made. Director Chen, he said finally, I accept your offer, but I want to make something clear. If I do this job, I'm going to do it honestly. That means sometimes telling you things you don't want to hear, pointing out when human solutions don't work for non-human problems." Chen smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less. Welcome to the Reconciliation Commission, Mr. Zexthon. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something remarkable." As the Last Hope continued its journey toward the former Imperial core worlds, Zexthon found himself thinking not about the empire that had fallen, but about the galaxy that was being born to replace it. It would be messy, chaotic, and probably dangerous. But for the first time in his life, it would also be free. The age of the Galactic Empire was over. The age of the free galaxy was just beginning.